AITA for my boyfriend humiliated me in front of the family over my cooking and I left dinner. After that I started cooking only for myself. I've 26F been dating my boyfriend 28M for almost a year now, and up until recently, I would have said things were going really well between us. He's sweet in so many ways, always does little things like bringing me coffee in bed on Sundays, and he's got this incredible sense of humor that always makes me laugh. I really thought we were a great match. But something happened last weekend that has left me questioning our relationship, and honestly, I can't shake off how hurt and embarrassed I felt. A bit of background might help paint the picture. I love cooking. I'm not a professional chef or anything, but it's one of my biggest passions. I spend a lot of time looking up recipes, experimenting in the kitchen, and trying to make meals that are both healthy and taste great. My boyfriend knows how much cooking means to me. He's even complimented my cooking skills several times, though there's always been this one little caveat. That caveat is his mom's cooking, and more specifically, her lasagna. I swear, I've heard about this lasagna more times than I can count. The legendary lasagna seems to hold an almost mythic place in his heart, and he never misses an opportunity to compare my dishes to his mom's cooking. It's usually lighthearted, and I try to just laugh it off because I know it's a common thing for guys to compare everything to their mom's cooking. But lately, it's felt less and less like teasing and more like undermining my efforts. A few months ago, I even decided to make lasagna because he wouldn't stop talking about it. I thought I could take a crack at it and maybe impress him a little. I went all out, making my own sauce from scratch, layering everything with care, and letting it bake until it was all bubbly and golden. I was proud of my effort, and I felt like it turned out pretty damn well. But when I served it to him, he didn't have anything nice to say. He made a face and said, "It's good, but not like my mom's. Hers is just, I don't know, it's got something yours doesn't." I tried to pry a bit, asking what exactly I could do to improve, but he shrugged and said, "I don't know, I guess you just need more practice." It stung, but I let it go because I didn't want to make a big deal of it. So fast forward to last weekend. We were heading over to his parents' place for dinner. This was a big deal for me because I'm still trying to make a good impression on his family. They're nice enough, but I always feel a bit like I'm under a microscope around them. His mom is a very traditional woman who clearly takes a lot of pride in her cooking, and I get it, she's amazing in the kitchen, and I respect that. Before we left, my boyfriend made an offhand comment that really rubbed me the wrong way. He was straightening his shirt in the mirror, and I was just putting on my shoes when he looked over at me and said, "Maybe tonight you'll finally learn how to make lasagna properly. Yours could definitely use some improvement." I tried to laugh it off, but it really hurt my feelings. Here I was, going to his family's house, hoping to make a good impression, and he's essentially telling me that my cooking isn't up to par and that I should take notes from his mom. I took a deep breath and decided to let it go, thinking I'd just focus on having a good time at dinner. I didn't want to start an argument before we even left. We got to his parents' place, and it was all the usual pleasantries. His mom greeted us warmly, his dad was in the living room watching TV, and the smell of lasagna filled the house. I already knew what was on the menu, and I was prepared to hear everyone rave about it. Honestly, I was fine with that. I understand his mom's lasagna is a family favorite, and it's not a competition for me. I just wanted to enjoy the meal and have a nice evening. Everything was fine at first. We were all sitting around the table, and his mom brought out the lasagna. It did look amazing, with layers of cheese and sauce perfectly melded together. Everyone started eating, and naturally, the compliments started rolling in. "This is the best lasagna, as always, Mom. You've really outdone yourself," all of that. I smiled and agreed, telling his mom it was really delicious, because it truly was. But then, my boyfriend just couldn't resist. He turned to me, with that playful smirk of his, and said, "See, this is real lasagna. I've tried making it once, but let's just say, there's a reason we're all here eating my mom's tonight." Everyone laughed. I tried to smile and play along, but it felt like a punch in the gut. I could feel my face getting hot, but I kept quiet. I thought maybe he'd stop there, but he didn't. He kept going, saying that I burned the sauce, which I definitely didn't, and that maybe I should just leave lasagna to the experts. His mom laughed awkwardly, like even she wasn't sure if it was funny anymore, and his dad just kept eating, oblivious. I could feel my stomach sinking. I was sitting there, trying to hold it together, but every time I thought he was done, he'd make another comment about how I should take notes from his mom or how practice makes perfect. It felt like I was being picked apart in front of his family, and I couldn't understand why he was doing this. Was it supposed to be funny? Was he trying to impress his parents by putting me down? I didn't get it. The more he talked, the smaller I felt. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also couldn't sit there and pretend that everything was fine. So I put my fork down, took a deep breath, and excused myself from the table. I mumbled something about needing some fresh air, and I walked out the front door. I went to the car and sat there, trying to collect myself. I felt humiliated. It wasn't just about the lasagna, it was the way he seemed to enjoy making me the butt of the joke, especially in front of his family. It made me question whether he respected me at all. A few minutes later, my boyfriend came out, looking genuinely confused. He opened the car door and asked why I had left. I tried to explain to him how his comments made me feel, how hurt and embarrassed I was, and how I didn't understand why he thought it was okay to make fun of me like that. Instead of apologizing, he rolled his eyes and said I was overreacting. He told me it was just a joke and that I needed to stop being so sensitive, especially around his family. That was the breaking point for me. I was already hurt, and now he was making me feel like I was in the wrong for having feelings at all. I told him that if he thought embarrassing me in front of his family was funny, maybe he should just date his mom's cooking instead. It just came out I was so upset, and I wanted him to understand how much he'd hurt me. He didn't take it well. He got angry, said I was ruining the night, and accused me of being dramatic. He said I needed to apologize to his mom for walking out and making things awkward. I couldn't believe it. I was the one who'd been humiliated, and somehow, I was supposed to apologize. We ended up driving home in silence, and since then, things have been tense between us. He's barely spoken to me, and when he does, it's cold and short. He's clearly waiting for me to apologize, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I feel like I didn't do anything wrong by standing up for myself. I tried to tell him how I felt, and he dismissed me entirely. I keep replaying the whole evening in my head, wondering if I overreacted or if I should have just sucked it up and laughed along. But every time I think about it, I still feel that pang of hurt. It wasn't just a joke to me, it was him putting me down in front of people I'm trying to make a good impression with. It felt disrespectful, and I can't help but feel like he should be the one apologizing, not me. I've talked to a couple of my friends about it, and they're split. Some think I should just let it go and apologize to keep the peace, but others think he was completely out of line and that I deserve an apology. I'm really torn because I care about him a lot, but I also don't want to be with someone who thinks it's okay to make me feel small, especially in front of others. So, after that dreadful night at his parents' house, things didn't get any better. In fact, if anything, they got more awkward. We'd moved past the silent treatment phase, and now it was just this weird tension hanging over us. I could feel it every time I looked at him, and I think he could feel it too. We'd exchange these forced, polite conversations like roommates who barely knew each other. You know, the kind of conversations that are stripped of all warmth and love, just mechanical words being said to keep up appearances. I was tired of it, honestly. I knew I had to do something to make myself feel better because, at that point, it felt like my feelings didn't matter to him. And since he made it clear he wasn't going to apologize, I decided that I was going to take back my power in one of the few ways I could. I was going to stop cooking for him. I know it sounds petty, but cooking is something I genuinely love. It brings me joy, and when I cook for someone, it's my way of showing love and care. But he took that and turned it into something hurtful. He belittled it, and in a way, he made me feel like all that effort was meaningless. So, I decided it was time to stop giving that part of myself to him. The first day I did it, I could feel my resolve harden. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a beautiful breakfast. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, the works. He came out of the bedroom a little while later, sniffing the air. I could tell he expected a plate to be waiting for him, just like always. But when he walked in and saw me sitting there, a single plate in front of me, he looked confused, his brow furrowed, and I could see the question forming on his lips, but I just went about eating my breakfast, pretending I didn't notice. I could see him awkwardly hovering, waiting for me to say something or offer to make him a plate, but I didn't. Instead, I just smiled and said, "Morning," before taking another bite of my perfectly fluffy pancakes. He finally asked, "Is there anything for me?" and I shook my head, keeping my tone even. "Nope, I just made enough for myself." He didn't say much after that, just sort of nodded and mumbled something before heading back to the bedroom. I could tell he was annoyed, but he didn't press it then. For lunch, it was a similar story. I made myself a nice pasta salad, and again, he came out, looking around, expecting to see something for him. When he asked why I hadn't made anything for him, I simply said, "Well, you don't like the way I cook, remember? I figured it was better this way. I like my cooking, so I'll just cook for myself." He looked like he wanted to say something, but instead, he just turned and left the room. That evening, he decided he wasn't going to take it anymore. He stomped into the kitchen, grabbed some ingredients, and started cooking for himself. I sat in the living room, watching TV, but I could hear the chaos in the kitchen. Pots clanging, drawers opening and slamming shut. He was clearly struggling, and I knew he wasn't much of a cook. Honestly, it was a little satisfying to hear it felt like a small form of justice. Eventually, he emerged with something that vaguely resembled a meal. He sat down at the table across from me, and I couldn't help but glance at his plate. It was a sad-looking bowl of undercooked pasta with some kind of watery sauce. I could tell just by looking at it that it wasn't good. He took a bite, and I watched as his face twisted. He tried to keep a straight expression, but the look of disappointment was unmistakable. He forced a few more bites down, all the while shooting me these side glances, almost as if he was expecting me to swoop in and save him, to offer to make him something better, but I didn't. I just continued eating my own dinner, a perfectly cooked salmon with roasted vegetables, and acted like I didn't notice his struggle. Over the next few days, this pattern continued. I would cook for myself, making dishes that I loved, things I knew I was good at: risottos, curries, homemade bread, you name it. I'd enjoy my meals, savoring each bite, while he either attempted to cook for himself or resorted to takeout. I could see his frustration growing, but he was too proud to admit it. He'd make his mediocre meals, sit down across from me, and eat in silence, his eyes darting over to my plate every now and then. It was like he was waiting for me to crack, to go back to the way things were before, but I didn't. One night, he tried to bring it up again. He said something like, "You know, I was only commenting on the lasagna. It wasn't that big of a deal." I just looked at him and shrugged. "Well, those comments made it pretty clear you don't like my cooking, so I'm just making sure I don't burden you with it." He tried to argue, saying it wasn't what he meant, that it was just one dish, but I could tell he still didn't understand why I was hurt. He was missing the point entirely, that it wasn't just about the lasagna. It was about the way he disrespected me and my efforts, especially in front of his family. Eventually, he stopped trying to cook and just started ordering takeout most nights. I think he thought that would get to me, that seeing him eat takeout while I cooked would somehow make me feel bad, but it didn't. If anything, it just reinforced how little he was willing to put in the effort. It was like he was trying to prove a point, but all it did was make me feel more justified in my decision. The whole situation made me realize just how much I'd been putting into the relationship, how much effort I'd been making to take care of him, to show him love in the ways I knew how. And it made me realize how little he appreciated any of it. It wasn't just about the cooking, it was about the lack of respect, the lack of understanding, and the lack of effort on his part. He expected me to just take care of him without ever considering what that meant for me or how his words and actions affected me. It's been a couple of weeks now, and things are still tense. He hasn't apologized, not really. He said things like, "I didn't mean it that way," or "You're taking it too personally," but there hasn't been a real apology, no acknowledgement of how his words hurt me. And honestly, I'm not sure if I even want one anymore. I think I've come to a point where I'm realizing that maybe this relationship isn't what I thought it was. Maybe the person I thought he was isn't who he really is, and maybe I deserve better than someone who thinks it's okay to belittle me and then refuse to take responsibility for it. After weeks of eating his sad, repetitive takeout, I could see it was wearing on him. At first, he tried to make it seem like it didn't bother him, like he was perfectly happy with whatever fast food or delivery he could get his hands on. He'd come into the dining area, open up his plastic takeout container, and start eating while glancing at my plate. He tried to act like he didn't care, but it was painfully obvious that he did. He was used to eating home-cooked meals every day, meals made with care and thought. And there I was, sitting across from him with something fresh and colorful, a meal made with real ingredients, while he choked down another greasy burger or a limp, soggy slice of pizza. The more I cooked for myself, the more I noticed him hovering, almost like he was trying to work up the courage to ask me for some. I ignored it, though. I had no intention of offering him anything after how things had played out. He needed to learn that his words had consequences, and that if he wanted to reap the benefits of my love and care, he had to actually respect me. One evening, I decided to make lasagna. I don't know if it was a subconscious choice, or if I just wanted to remind myself that I was good at cooking, that the lasagna wasn't the problem, it was his inability to appreciate it. I spent hours putting it together. I made the sauce from scratch, layered it with a blend of cheeses and perfectly seasoned meat, and when it came out of the oven, it was bubbling and golden. It smelled amazing, the kind of smell that makes your whole home feel warm and comforting. As I sat down with my plate, I could see him watching from the couch. He'd ordered some takeout again, some sad-looking noodles, probably the cheapest thing he could find. He tried to look like he didn't care, but I could tell he did. His eyes kept darting to my lasagna, and I could see his frustration mounting. Eventually, he stood up and walked over to me. I could tell from his body language that he was about to try something, and I braced myself. He asked me to share, and I just looked at him, silently shaking my head. He sighed, and I could see the irritation flicker in his eyes. Without warning, he reached for my bowl, trying to take it. I pulled it away, and for a few moments, it was almost like a silent tug-of-war, him trying to grab it, and me refusing to let go. It was ridiculous, really, like two kids fighting over a toy. But I wasn't about to let him take my food after everything that had happened. He needed to understand that my cooking wasn't something he could just take for granted. He finally gave up, his face flushed with embarrassment. And that's when it happened. He broke. He actually apologized. It wasn't some half-hearted, dismissive apology like before. No, this time, he looked genuinely sorry. He said he was wrong, that my lasagna was amazing, that everything I cooked was amazing. And then, in what was probably the most vulnerable I'd ever seen him, he asked me to forgive him and to let him have some of the lasagna. He even added a bit of humor to it, almost like he was trying to lighten the tension, but it was awkward. There was something so raw and almost endearing about seeing him that way, admitting that he'd been wrong, acknowledging how much he'd missed my cooking, and actually asking, in his own awkward way, for a chance to make things right. For a few moments, I just stared at him, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hold on to the hurt, to let him stew in it a little longer. But as I looked at him standing there, looking so genuinely remorseful, I felt my resolve starting to waver. I had missed this side of him, the one that was willing to admit his mistakes, the one that was human and imperfect, but trying. It wasn't the perfect apology, but it was enough for me to see that he was actually making an effort. So, I sighed, nodded, and told him he could have some. I got up, grabbed another plate, and cut him a generous slice of lasagna. As I handed it to him, I could see the relief wash over his face. He sat down at the table across from me, and for the first time in weeks, we ate together. And as silly as it sounds, it felt like a moment of healing, like we were finally starting to move past the hurt and the pride and the pettiness that had built up between us. As we ate, things felt a little lighter. He made a few jokes, and I found myself smiling in spite of everything. There was still tension, still a lot left unsaid, but it felt like a step in the right direction. He complimented the lasagna, and this time, I could tell he meant it. He even made a comment about how he could never make something like this, and for once, it didn't feel like a backhanded remark, it just felt honest. A little later, I apologized to his family for leaving the dinner that night. I was surprised at how understanding they were. I had walked into their home feeling a mix of shame and nerves, worried that they might think less of me for how I handled things. But as I spoke, they listened attentively, and I could see that they genuinely cared. His dad gave me an encouraging nod, and his mom, in her gentle way, reassured me that things like this happen. She mentioned that family dinners can sometimes get intense, especially with all the teasing and personalities involved, and she understood how a comment could cut deeper than intended. I felt a weight lift off my chest as I realized they weren't judging me for it. What really touched me was when his mom added that she'd love to try my lasagna someday, but without any of the unnecessary comparisons. She smiled at me with this sincerity that made me feel seen, like she was extending an olive branch, not just for me to prove myself in her kitchen, but to genuinely connect over something I was passionate about. It wasn't about who was the better cook or whose lasagna was right. It was just a small act of kindness, and it went a long way. For a moment, I could imagine us in her kitchen together, sharing tips and laughing over bubbling pots of sauce. That small gesture meant so much to me. It wasn't just about lasagna, it was about her wanting to get to know me better, about me being welcomed into the fold of their family, beyond the awkwardness of what had happened. It was a way of saying, we see you, and we want you here. Am I AITA because I reacted like that and cooked food only for myself?